I hope you have your guitar out, tuned to standard pitch. And as always, I hope you have a notebook or a binder, or at the minimum, a piece of paper and something to write with in case you want to take notes. Today's lesson is our first lesson where we start to work with chords on 4 strings. So there's a couple things we have to sort of clarify here before we get going. We will be using 4 strings. We'll be using the E, B, G, and D strings, the first 4 strings of the guitar. However, the chords that we're going to be playing are still going to be 3-note chords, or as they are referred to technically, triads. So we're going to play these 3-note chords on 4 strings. So if there's only 3 notes in the chord and we're using 4 strings, it stands to reason that one of the notes of the chord will be played twice. And that the second note that we're adding in will be an octave to one of the notes that's in the chord. So the first set of chords I want to look at are the ones with the root notes on the B string. And that's pretty much where we started out. But there's something that I really need you to understand and get your head around. And I'm going to try to say this slowly, and hopefully it won't be confusing. And I guess what I'm going to say is this. For any note that we play on the E string, and by the E string I mean the first string, there is a note that is an octave lower than that note, 2 frets higher on the D string. So just as an example, if I have the open E string, if I go to the D string, I can find the E note that's an octave lower at the 2nd fret. That's 2 frets higher than the open string. So I have the open E, and then I have the note that's an octave lower at the 2nd fret on the D string. And this will hold for any note that we play on the E string. Let's start out with our root note B string C major chord fingering, the open fingering, where our root note is at the 1st fret of the B string. Typically, we play the open G string, the C note at the 1st fret of the B string, and then we play the open E string. And that gives us the notes of our chord. However, what we're going to do now is we're going to add in the note that's an octave lower than this open E string that we're playing. And that note is at the 2nd fret on the D string. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my middle finger and I'm going to reach over and I'm going to play the note that's at the 2nd fret on the D string. And that note is E. And it's an octave lower than the open E string. So now if I start and with my D string, I have my 4-string C major chord. So again, this is the same, it's C major. It's essentially the same chord that we've been playing. The only difference is now we've added in that 4th string by adding that E note that's at the 2nd fret on the D string. So this is how we're going to play our C major chord fingering using 4 strings. And we still have open strings in this, so it is an open string fingering, and we're going to use this specifically for our C major chord. So moving on, we come to the D major chord. And the D major chord has a sort of a unique quality about it, because the root note D, which is at the 3rd fret of the B string, is also the same note as the open D string. So we can add in the open D string for to this fingering. And now we have a 4-string fingering. Now this is the way that the D chord is commonly played. And it's an open string fingering. And that is unique to this chord because we happen to have our octave note to the root is the open string. So, whoops, let me play all 4. So this is another fingering that we're going to have unique to the D major chord. So, but we can do another fingering. And what we want to do is, again, if we look, the note we're playing on the E string is at the 2nd fret. That is the F sharp note. Well, as I said, the octave to that note can be found 2 frets higher on the D string. So we can add in the note that's at the 4th fret of the D string. Now, you can reach your pinky around to try to grab that note if you want to. It's a bit of a stretch for me, and there's also some issues where you need to make sure this pinky doesn't drag any other strings. But it's possible to use this fingering. And now we have a 4-string D major chord. But what we can do to make things easier is we can take our index finger and we can bar across the G, B, and E strings at the 2nd fret. So now this covers our note at the 2nd fret on the E string, as well as our note at the 2nd fret on the G string. So now we add in our root note using our middle finger at the 3rd fret. So we have something like this, which is sort of an alternate fingering for the 3-note version of the major chord. However, we need to add in the note on the D string. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my ring finger and I'm going to reach up and I'm going to play that note that's at the 4th fret of the D string. And now I have a 4-string movable major chord. Now this chord will present some challenges and you're going to need to probably work with it a little bit, but that's fine. The most difficult part will probably be adding in this ring finger and not having it drag against other strings. So this introduces our movable chord form. And we must remember that the root note is still on the B string. So now let's look at the minor chord fingerings. And let's start with the D minor chord. Now the D minor chord is going to be a special case. So let me just finger it the way we've been playing it on 3 strings. We have the root note D, which is at the 3rd fret on the B string. However, just like the D major chord, there's a unique quality to this chord because we have the octave to the root note is the open D string. So now all I need to do is take my D minor chord fingering and I need to add my open D string to it. And now I have a 4-string version of the D minor chord. So again, all I'm doing is using the existing fingering that we've had, and I'm just adding in that open D string to turn our 3-note chord into a 4-note chord. So that's the D minor chord. So now from here, let's just move up to the E minor chord and let's see how we can do this. So if we look at our E minor chord, what we want to do here is we want to add in the octave note to the note we're playing on the E string. So the note we're playing on the E string is at the 3rd fret. That's our G note. We want to add in the note that's on the 5th fret of the D string. And we could reach up with our pinky and we can play that note. And there's nothing wrong with this fingering. However, again, it may be a little tough for some people. So what we can do is we can rethink our fingering. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my index finger and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bar across the E, G, and B strings, similar to what I did with the major chord. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my root note, E, which is at the 5th fret of the B string. And I'm going to use my pinky for that. And now for the G string, I still have to add that note in that we typically play for our E minor, which is at the 4th fret. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my middle finger for that, which leaves my ring finger to reach up and play the note that I've added. So now the fingering looks different, but we're really just playing the same E minor chord that we were playing, and now we're adding in the note that's at the 5th fret on the D string. So now we have our E minor. And from here, we can move this chord. We must remember, however, that the root note is on the B string. So we have E minor, and we can move this up. We have F minor. From here, we can move it up, and we have G minor, A minor, and finally B minor. I understand these chords may be very difficult to play for the beginner. The important thing to understand is that by practicing them, we're working on building the strength that we need in our fingers, and we're working on building the ability to stretch our fingers in order to play notes. And there's really no other way that we can really do this. You're going to have to, over time, figure out how you need to angle your wrist, how you need to place your arms, and how you need to place your arm, and how you need to place your fingers. And that only comes through trial and error. So put in your time, put in your work, and I hope to see you at the next lesson. Peace.